Hey, 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 this is Natasha Nurse, the host of Sisters on Fire IRL series, and I'm really excited to be speaking with Kima Cooper, who is the director of social media and content at Birchbox. And as such, she is a lover of great stories. A recent New York resident, Kima was born in Nigeria but grew up in the UK. Having studied law at Cardiff University, she changed focus to marketing and has amassed 10 years of experience working for brands such as the BBC, Net-a-Porter Group, ASOS, and MNS. How are you, Kima?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's always such an honor to be a host of the series and to speak with Sisters on Fire like yourself. And so I guess my first question would be for everyone listening, for you to kind of talk through how you became the woman you are today.
All right. Okay. Where to start? So I'd say that if I had to give you a summary, that I've arrived where I am today via a very unconventional and unexpected means. And I think I'm here today because I've been able to kind of push back on what I was, push back on what I was expected to do and rather thought about what I wanted to do and how I would go about achieving that. So I'm Nigerian, I have a Nigerian background. Anyone who's West African or, just of a different cultural background to say that, say being from the West, you'll understand the cultural implications of choosing to take a different path. And the expectation on me was to focus on picking 4 different routes, the main routes that are acceptable to most Nigerian parents, which are you're either a doctor, a dentist, engineer, or a lawyer, or things in that kind of space are okay. And so I went down the law route and I studied law at Cardiff Uni. And I was happy to do it. I learned a lot from the experience, but at the end of it, I had to be honest about whether it felt like the thing I would want to do for the rest of my working life. And I had to present a 5-year plan to my dad to explain why it wasn't for me. And then really kind of attack the route that I wanted to take, which was more in the media and marketing space. So I started out doing insights because I couldn't get into that space, with the background that I had that easily. But I did know I had to get a foot in the door, and I found the way to compromise on that. At least for a short period of time, to make sure that once you're in, you could, learn some things that are valuable to you, and then use that to help you get a leg up in the space you want to be in. So I moved from there into marketing, and having an insights background actually served me well. Having a legal background actually served me well too. Being open to taking those different routes, I think is a very important thing and very crucial thing when you're deciding on where you want to be, and not beating yourself up if you don't get it right the first time around. It's like, okay, so what are the other ways I could do this, and be creative with it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I also have a legal background. I'm a lawyer and kind of made my way into kind of non-traditional legal path, and then found my way into entrepreneurship. And I always find it, very funny how people are so surprised by the idea of like coming from one segment of an industry and kind of transitioning when, what is a lawyer? A lawyer is a problem solver. You can problem solve in anything, right? Like, so,
Yeah.
And legal training only makes you more focused. It makes you smarter, more capable of handling difficult situations. So it really does help in non-legal circumstances. If you could do things over again, do you think you still, like, knowing what you know now, would you still have gone to, like, through your legal training and everything?
Yeah, 1,000%. I think one key thing is that I think about when people talk about, would you change anything? It's like, no, because if I had changed anything, then I literally would not be, and I wouldn't have the body of experience that I have now. It's like, that would make me an entirely different person.
Exactly.
So the focus is not to have regrets, and it's, to really think about how you use your experience to help you move forward in life rather than have it hold you back.
Exactly. I completely agree. When now being kind of that you've amassed all this experience with marketing and insights and stuff, I guess what has been the most surprising thing that you've learned, I guess, in this industry, dealing with brands and marketing and consumerism?
Uh, I guess I could say, I don't know if that's surprising so much as it's how cyclical it is in nature. Like it's there's really nothing new, if that
Mm-mm.
makes sense. So customers are still gonna, I mean, there are new things, like you get new innovations in technology, you get new new disruptors in the industry that come and do things a slightly different way. But at a very, very basic level, by our nature, we're very we're creatures of habit, and year in, year out, we'll work through like brainstorming, we'll talk about mindset, but there are certain things that just don't really change about humans and how we behave and ultimately how that translates to the industry. So I don't know if you need to crack your head about really scratch your head about trying to do like the newest thing ever. Maybe it's more about how you reconnect to your humanity and how, you, at least from a marketing standpoint, talk about something real enough of value.
Gotcha. Okay. And with how
That makes sense.
no, that does make sense. That's interesting.
Yeah.
With how retail is changing, right? And it seems like, so many brands, like brands that have been in existence for so long are struggling. How does that affect, of someone like yourself and dealing with like marketing strategy and how to connect with the audience when, some people just don't seem to want to shop the same places or shop in the same way that they used to 10, 15 years ago.
And this is where it goes back to like connecting to. I don't think the people's needs have changed in terms of like you still need clothes, you still need food, you still want to travel. Like you still have the same challenges. The point I was making about connecting back to humanity is like actually just going to people and talking to them and asking them and figuring out how you make a solution for what they need, rather than what has historically been the case with like more traditional bricks and mortar type marketing and bricks and mortar type shopping. So realistically, like go back to what people need. The reason why these things have the rise of e-commerce and subscription-based brands like the brand I work for have come up is because they've kind of worked on, okay, if we take the example of Birchbox, that it's the premise of it came about because it was overwhelming to go into a store and be faced by 1,000 different products that all professing to do a different thing. And it was born because that was overwhelming, and it was like creating a solution for that woman and that person who's overwhelmed by it. It's like, okay, here's a bite-sized way for you to try different things to find out what works for you.
Gotcha. And is there any difference in the behavior of shopping like in the UK as opposed to the US, or no?
Interesting. There's probably differences in the sense of like the rate of change. But overall, I'd say, it's a fairly standard trend that's going, that's happening across the board.
Gotcha. Okay. And, I'd love.
It's interesting for me when you take it to like markets like, say, Nigeria, where you might have different things that are happening in technology space happening at a quicker rate. So infrastructure is a challenge over there. So the rise of like mobile is much, much starker when you compare it to somewhere in the West. It's just the difference and the leaps that are happening there make it very interesting to like see the regional changes.
Gotcha. Okay. And when it comes to your career so far, how would you say your journey has been affected as a person of color and as being a woman?
So I am going through something I'm just going to be very open about it, because something very different for me, because I obviously grew up, most of my growing up and my formative years have been based in the UK. And the UK market is wildly different to the US because conversations about race aren't as prominent. You don't talk about it in the UK as much as, at least I personally haven't talked about race as much as I have in the US in the last year, for example. And it's opened me up in a lot of ways because, one, I think I started off not understanding, why are we talking about this so much? Why is it the topic of almost every conversation I have with another person of color? And this feeling of the feeling of the injustice and how deep it runs in the nation's psyche is something that I've become more aware of over time. And I've built up empathy. First, it started as empathy and starting to understand it a lot more. I'm like, okay, I get why. I see examples now. I get, I see in real time what the issues are. And then I'm now at a point where I'm discovering what I can do in my position and what things I can do to help people learn and advance more. Because I've come from a different background and place altogether, I feel like in some ways I can be more of an impartial party. Someone that can help translate the conversations that we're having and like, oh, okay, so this is a specific, so if I just come out of a brainstorm with my team, for example, and we've been talking about women in business and how we as a brand can be useful and talk about stories that really advance women. And then in the course of that conversation, I was like, well, it's important to think about the term intersectionality and how you then layer that on top of the conversations we're having about, maternity leave and, progressing your career, negotiating for yourself, and like thinking about those other things that also play a factor, like your gender, your race, your sexuality, things like that. So being on this journey, and I feel like everyone's on their own path and journey. For me, it's still kind of like a discovery and an awakening in a lot of ways.
I guess, would you say you felt like, have you ever felt like you weren't heard, or that your voice wasn't valued enough, or that you were challenged in a way that maybe your your white counterparts haven't felt that way, or things like that?
Curiously, up until now, I'd say I haven't felt that way necessarily. That hasn't been my personal experience. And that's been more because, like I say, it isn't something that's so present in the national conversation, or it hasn't been until, say, something like Brexit happened in the UK, which is why it was such a shock for everyone. But because of that very thing, I found that I haven't had to like walk into a room and think about my color. And that's a privilege in its own way. It's like being able to walk into a room and not, be concerned that you might be perceived a different way because you're a woman and or because you're a woman of color. So I think that's the thing that I have had to address and like review as I've been going through this discovery period and figuring out how I can then, knowing that I feel very comfortable in those spaces, be a person that can be an ally and an advocate for doing the right thing.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful, because I think that, a lot of times here in the States, we do feel frustrated, right, with the idea that, even when we are at the table, it's as if our seat is diminished, or that, even if we do voice up, it's certain sensitivities to being a person of color isn't taken seriously. And then you have these campaigns that are put out here, and they offend and they hurt certain populations, and it's avoidable hurt, right? And it's just like, but no, that's wonderful. And I hope, everyone listening is inspired by the fact, because I feel like sometimes here we do feel like it's always like it's very intense, but maybe the intensity is the same everywhere, which is something to think about when people are looking to see where they want to work. Maybe people don't want to deal with that, and they consider more international opportunities because things obviously are different everywhere. So that's very interesting. Okay.
Now it's a whole different world.
It is. It is indeed. I guess now I'd love to shift gears to talking about Sisters on Fire. So, Sisters on Fire is a play that was started by Professor Marcia McNair and Anissa Moore, who are both professors at Nassau Community College. And they were really concerned with wanting to have a collaborative project that was about sharing the Black woman narrative. And they put together a play with like 4 different personalities, and it was, very well received. And so in between productions, we wanted to keep the fire going by having this series and highlighting women like yourself who are just like unapologetically awesome and are inspirations to other women and young girls of color. So I guess my first question would be then, how would you define the term sister on fire?
How would I define the term? I think someone who's very comfortable in who they are, and someone who can being comfortable in who you are means that you can move in different spaces and be able to be open to new experiences, learn new things, but also bring what you bring to the table and know your value. So I think maybe just that as a starting point at a very basic level is one thing. Then it's obviously all the other stuff, like, having achieved that state within yourself, what that then means in terms of the I guess professional or personal achievements that you've gathered over whatever span of time we're talking about. So I'd say that's the crucial, the crux for me, is that person who has realized and come into their own womanhood and is fully encompassing that in a very, very natural and comfortable and at ease way.
I love it. Absolutely. And in your life, would you say there were women that lived up to that definition?
Oh, I like to move among them. It's like I had a friend who when we were teenagers, literally turned to me one day, and it was hilarious. She said to me, "I don't have any ugly friends," and I don't think she meant that literally as like how they physically looked, but more about the people she moved with, or people that she genuinely thought were beautiful, and that's how I feel about the people that I spend my time with and that I work with, is that they are in their own ways gifted and talented and wonderful people. I have a friend who's a designer who is so creative. Like, just being around her, you feel you get some of her shine, like really adds to yours. I have friends who are lawyers, who are bosses in the finance space, and I don't know, I feel so passionately about the people that I choose to spend my time with, let alone the people I look up to and aspire to, as like, the Ava DuVernays or the Elaine Welteroth. Like, I literally, they're incredible and amazing people, but just even you don't even need that to be able to get some of that glow, or bask in that glow. Is that you just look around you, it's everywhere.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay. Now, I guess, would you, for last minute questions, just like, if you could advise anyone listening who is trying to be, closer in line with, a sister on fire, or to make sure that they feel satisfied in what they're doing in life, and if similar to you, if they started off one way and like me and they wanted to make changes, what advice would you give that person listening?
I think if you start off on a path and you know that you want to get to somewhere, and you need some help with breaking that ground, I'd say the first thing is to talk to people, use your contact base. I think a lot of people think they need to know someone very strongly, but actually some of the best connections come from like your second and third. If you go like a couple of levels deeper, you'll find really, really great resources that way. Treat your mentors like friends, so you don't have to go for a CEO level person to get an amazing insight or learning. So go for someone who you can relate to. Go for someone who, you know, might be like, say, a friend of your mom, an aunt, someone who is passionate, who is doing amazing things, or exudes that to you. Let them be a great resource for you. If you're talking about practical things, LinkedIn has literally changed the game for me. I think in the last 10 years, don't think I've gotten any job any other way. Like no recruiter has ever been able to sell me better than I sell myself. So I go on LinkedIn, and if I apply for a job or if I see something that might be interesting, I reach out to connections, whether they're second level, third level down. As long as there is some connection, I'm happy and comfortable to reach out to them. And even if I apply for a job, I look for the job post, I send them an email, I customize my message to them. And it really does come back, it pays off.
Very great advice. And I couldn't agree more, to be honest, because I think people are sleeping on LinkedIn and it doesn't make any sense, because there's a lot of resources there, and you are right. I mean, I've done recruiting, so, we do work hard, but you are right. Like, at the end of the day, no one is going to be more impassioned about you than you. So you've got to be the best storyteller that you can be. And why not use free resources like LinkedIn, where you're connected to like millions of people in many different positions that you definitely want to better connect yourself with. So I definitely I say that all the time.
Cut out the middleman, go to the source. That's what I would say.
Oh, coming for recruiters. Oh no.
Oh no. But that's an example of like an industry, like you just have to like, it's another example of an industry that to me, I'm like, I don't relate to at all. I think about those disruptors. LinkedIn is a big disruptor. It's happening everywhere. If you look at like estate agents, real estate agents, like it takes, I rent out my property in London. I don't use a real estate agent. I found a website that does everything they do at literally a fraction of the cost. Like, so the need hasn't changed. The need hasn't changed. I need someone to help me get my ad out that I was trying to rent my place, but the means by doing it has. And I think that is ultimately what talk about getting in touch with the humanity and how people might need to consume things or do things.
Very smart. Awesome. Well, if anyone is listening and they want to like get to know you more, they want to connect with you, potentially collaborate with you, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
I mean, I'm an Instagram fiend.
Okay.
So if you want to chat, if you want to find me, I'm at ELEKIMA on Instagram. That's Kima.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, Kima, for sharing your story, sharing incredible advice and wisdom. And I know everyone listening is just as inspired and motivated as I am to speak with you. So thank you for being you, and thank you for being a part of the Sisters on Fire IRL series.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being you as well, Natasha. You're awesome.
Thank you. All right, have a good day.